Vitalik, the entire thing was just institutions. It's next level. This industry is going to the next level. And guys, I don't know what else to say. I'm bullish.
You said it. You finally said it.
I'm so bullish.
Andy's bullish. I'm bullish. We're bullish. We're going to the top. We're on 4th floor today. We're going to be on floor 1, and then we're headed straight to the moon, boys.
Guys, we're going to 0. It's the reality of the situation. Not what you want to hear, but that's where we're at. Bitcoin is in an absolute free fall. We are under the 2021 highs. The 2024 highs. We've completely erased the entire Trump rally. ETH is under 2K. I'm hearing conflicting reports as to why things are down. On one hand, you've got the quantum risk of Bitcoin. Ethereum has 6+ years of quantum security research. So why does that mean everything is getting pulled down by everything else? Bitcoin is not outperforming gold. I can just reinforce all of the things that you guys already know. Hyperliquid is the only thing that is somewhat holding up. It's pretty sad what's happening out there. Billions of dollars of liquidations in just the last few hours. There's going to be fallout from this. We're going to see market makers get liquidated. We're going to see price sensitive businesses go out of business. There's going to be layoffs. There's going to be companies that don't make it through this point of the market cycle. And so, whether you guys are listening and you're a personal investor, stay off the leverage. It may even seem enticing. Now it feels like we're approaching a point where blood, is running through the streets, and they say, buy when there's blood on the streets. But frankly, we haven't seen the final leg of this, which is obviously what people were talking about. These guys that seemed indestructible and invincible, the Bitmine and MicroStrategy of the world. These guys are going to have their number called. Bitcoin is significantly under both of their average entries. They were buying on the way up. Will their LPs redeem these shares? Who knows? We're going to find out. And we're going to talk more about it. Interestingly, MicroStrategy is going to report their 4th quarter earnings this afternoon. Incredible timing. So, okay, let's go through a few headlines, try to make sense of everything that's happening out there. And then we're going to kick it over to a couple of guests. We're going to have another friend from the Avalanche world come in. That'll be Morgan. She'll be our first guest. And then we'll have our friends over at Relay who just announced the $17 million raise. Impeccable timing. They were able to raise in these market conditions. So, guys, let's
Mr.
go ahead,
Secretary,
get to our
reclaiming
first
my
headline.
time. Are you going
There's
to invest
the price-sensitive side of the market, which is what you probably see when you're scrolling through CoinGecko. You see a lot of the tokens that are liquid. And then you've got the other side of the market, which is price insensitive. And these are companies like Figure and a lot of the tokenization companies. It's a lot of the financial institutions. These guys are tokenizing money market funds. Stable coins are the core of this business. There's really not a whole lot of digital asset exposure, which is why people were so upset. And that is ultimately what's going to save these guys from bankruptcy now that the tokens are quite a bit down. So that's the current state. Figure outlines key operating metrics, framework ahead of quarterly results. Figure HELOC, I believe, superseded. They were up to $22 billion in loan origination. And Figure HELOC is now a top 10 cryptocurrency. So pretty incredible that rise. This is something that we anticipate will continue. They're essentially a tokenized fund, and you can contribute to these loans if, of course, you meet the regulatory and compliance metrics. Let's keep moving. We're going to speed run through this since we've got our first guest almost ready in the back. Next up, we see, again, Aria has been able to raise another $15 million late in 2025. This might be old news. They added even more after an unprecedented level of music industry funding last year. I anticipate teams like Aria are actually going to find a niche in the AI portion of the market when it comes to music and AI. That is something I anticipate will just continue to skyrocket. There's musicians out there that are completely AI generated, and they're getting tons of love from the existing music industry because people don't know that they're AI generated. I think now that everyone has top music label at their fingertips with all of the expertise and all of the instruments that are used to make music, we're going to see a lot more AI generated music. And I think AI in general is ripe for IP tokenization. No wonder Aria was able to raise another 15 million, and they were able to do so before this market downturn, which is going to be extremely important that teams get their raises in now so that they have plenty of runway to last out, what could be at least a multi-month, if not a multi-year bear market. We're going to hear more from raising in the current conditions later from our friends at Relay. Next up, we've got our previous Lord and Savior, Vitalik. So Vitalik has decided that now is a good time for him to be selling ETH. Pretty incredible. If you look at this dashboard, this is from Arkham, and you can see, right now, Vitalik's ETH pile is down 14% today, valued at about 6 million. He's got, just over 3,000 in ETH in his portfolio. You can also see here he's got some wrapped ETH, almost double, upwards of $11 million. He's got some stable coins. He's got $3 million of Go, LUSD. What is that? Harry Potter, Obama, Shiba Inu. Ticker is Bitcoin. Not very much in there. 32 cents. Just some dust for V. But yeah, you guys can see here that he, let's see. So he started to withdraw in PayPal USD. He's probably got some security reason for doing that. Vitalik uses Cow Swap, and he uses Aave as to where that ETH and that USD was sitting. And he has started to raise funds for what he's calling this period of austerity in the Ethereum world. Obviously, markets are not very friendly to austerity. So you can see he has started to increase his balances. And this is what's happening here. He's doing this on Ethereum, the L1, because there's no need for L2s. And yeah, V is dumping on us. Usually the Ethereum Foundation dumps at the top. Vitalik today decided to dump at the bottom. Incredible. Okay. This next one is the one I wanted to get to. If we're putting, our faith in Zhu Su, things might be a little bit off. So Zhu Su here has said here that now that reasoning by analogy is allowed, the reason that it's now allowed is because Kyle Samani has left multi-coin. He was the famous anti analogy logical reasoning by analogy was just fundamentally flawed to Kyle Samani. Now that he has left the ecosystem, we have Zhu Su reasoning by analogy saying that ETH is going to perform like Bitcoin last cycle. Bitcoin last cycle was kind of it was sort of a unicorn in the sense that it went up, everything else in the altcoin complex got crushed, including ETH. And then, later on, ETH had just a rapid rise, kind of a catch-up trade to Bitcoin. And Sol, he says, is going to perform like ETH. And Sol actually last cycle was a first mover. It had a run up to almost 300, if not, beyond 300, and was an incredible trade. People thought it was going to $1,000. Now we have hype. He says is going to perform like Sol last cycle, and lighter to perform like Sui. Sui obviously had another great year because it was performing like Solana as kind of a beta to Solana. The fact that we're going down so hard and fast, I think will ultimately rebound with similar velocity. I just don't have any conviction into where that bottom is. I'd love to sit here and tell you guys that, now is a great time to buy. The reality is that we could be going, to 50K because, well, if you're looking at previous cycles, we had gone down by more than 50%. If you look at where we are right now, we're hovering at about 50% of all-time highs. All-time high this cycle was 124K, if I remember correctly. 62K would be half of that, would be the 50% decline mark. And we're pretty much right there. And so Chris Bernisky actually had a lot of great tweets about this as well, where he tweeted out some levels that he was watching. And he was able to just call this. Shout out to Chris. Wish I followed this a little bit more carefully, was able to sell some and reserve some cash, which, will be the basis of starting to invest at these lower prices, but, still had some positions in the market absorbed in this downturn. And so Chris says, 80K was the November 25 low. This was the local low of this bear cycle, which hadn't even really gotten started. We've gone through the 80K level. 74K was the April 25 low. April 2025 was a result of Liberation Day and Trump's tariffs. It was also just below MicroStrategy's cost basis, which was 76K. We've blown past 74 and 76K to the downside, or way under MicroStrategy's cost basis. 70K was the top of the 2021 high. 2021 was 69K at the top. And so we've, now plunged below 70K. We're at about 63. And 50 to 70 was the range in 2021. 58K was the 200-week simple moving average. And then 50K and below is the bottom of that weekly range. And the psychological below that number, you would see death of Bitcoin calls once again. I personally don't think we get below 50K. I'm not, going to sit here and say what's possible and what's not, but it feels as if, between 50% to the downside, which is where we are now, we are probably going to go a little bit lower, just in a capitulation margin call liquidation cascade. Then that would be the most aggressive selling, which would push us lower than people feel like is a fair value. And then they come in because they feel like, it is under that fair value and push the price back up. I must think that, even if you think this quantum thing is just a catastrophic crisis, it just seems to me that, we're not going to get too far below 50K. There's people calling for 35K. Don't think we get quite there, but within this, around this 50 to 60 number, feels like it's a time to kind of just dollar cost average in. Don't go in on leverage. You don't know where the exact bottom will be. You just start chipping away, get in low cost basis, and ultimately stay patient because it's going to be a long road back to 100K and beyond. So guys, that sets the scene. That's where we are today. Our first guest is part of this institutional world. And so we can go ahead and get Morgan going. We're going to skip Victor. We're going to go to the VP of BD at Avalabs. We had a great conversation with Olivia Van Wad from Avalabs as well, the head of tokenization there. And I anticipate that with all the great things that AVAX is doing on Avalanche, we're going to have another equally great conversation here. So we're going to bring her in just a moment, get her started, and then we'll have a great conversation despite the market conditions. So stay right where you guys are. If you guys made it this far, I applaud you guys for sticking with us. We're going to bring the energy no matter what. The reality is that there are price insensitive markets out there. People are continuing to tokenize. A lot of the hate while the market was going down was that these guys weren't just buying assets, these financial institutions. They were actually creating their own products. Some people called that extractive. Other people just called that solid business practices. And so we've got Morgan in the back now. We're going to bring her up, and Morgan, let's have a great show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I was just, we were just talking about the markets a little bit. It's pretty catastrophic.
I was like, what am I coming into right now?
I know. It's crazy. I mean, I think, especially with the direction that Avalanche is heading, you guys are probably, talking to a lot of people that they don't watch the market with a very close eye, but I was explaining, we had a great conversation with Olivia, the head of tokenization at Avalabs. And she was, talking us through the different mechanisms for tokenization, how these institutions are thinking about this, and ultimately, what is bringing them on chain. I guess just to stay relevant here, how closely are some of these institutions looking at the market? Do they care that Bitcoin and ETH are kind of on a downslope now, or what is their perspective on this?
I mean, I think we'd all be happier if prices were a lot higher in general, and if we were in a bull market. But no, I mean, I think from an institutional standpoint, various types of institutions, whether they're financial services or government agencies or other types of enterprises and corporates, generally when they're kind of investing in this technology, it's more for a medium to long term outcome or an initiative. And so I think while, it's not particularly helpful in the short term, I don't necessarily think that their plans have been totally derailed because of maybe short-term kind of price action. And I think a lot of them are, beyond being able to kind of enable, crypto exposure and crypto trading to their clients, whether it's institutions or retail. A lot of them are also looking at how to actually use the tech in their day-to-day operations. And a lot of that revolves around stablecoins and smart contracts and tokenization by extension. And so it's very much looking at it as a technology and enabler to kind of enable their business outcomes. And so ultimately they're very kind of long-term oriented. And I think that they're still focused on building.
Yeah. No surprise there. I mean, like Ondo Summit was last week, got a great turnout. There's tons of tokenization platforms. It seems like there's tons of interest both at the regulatory level as well as the institutional level. We're seeing a lot of these products be announced. Before we go any deeper, Morgan, I'd love to get your background. It's your first time on the show. Welcome. Despite the market conditions, hopefully you're a cause for the market to bounce here. Give us a sense of how you got to Avalabs and a bit more about yourself.
Sure. So you may have reviewed this, but I run on-chain finance business development at Ava Labs. And so when I first started almost 4 years ago, my role was just to focus on institutions and capital markets. So it was really just to get, not just because it was a big remit in and of itself, but it was to get asset managers, FMIs, and banks to leverage Avalanche in the context of their blockchain and digital asset strategies. Over that past 4 years, the worlds of TradFi, DeFi, CeFi, and tokenization have really converged, and I think that they'll continue to converge. And so that remit has kind of expanded beyond just institutional and wholesale finance, but also to tokenization, which Olivia on my team leads, as well as payments and treasury, as well as DeFi. And we take a lot of the initiatives and partnerships forward within my team, kind of collectively across verticals or between verticals, because I think a lot of these things that are happening today are not necessarily mutually exclusive. And again, I think that they'll continue to converge. In terms of my kind of professional foray into the digital asset space, everyone has their story of how they discovered crypto and digital assets. For me, it was more boring, I guess. I came from TradFi, where I worked on a trading floor for 10 years. And then became chief of staff to Citi's chief compliance officer, which was a very eye-opening experience in kind of seeing how the whole bank kind of comes together and operates and how all the puzzle pieces fit into place. And even when I was sitting on the trading floor in the front, kind of first line of defense, I saw what happens when kind of, and this is not necessarily unique to Citi. I think it's any large enterprise and organization, but what happens when systems don't necessarily inherently talk to each other, and the manual processes that kind of arise or are needed to arise as a result, and fixes kind of implemented that way. And so as I kind of experienced that, I started learning more about digital assets and smart contracts, and figured that blockchain and smart contract capabilities could help to solve a lot of those issues as it relates to really upgrading legacy financial services infrastructure and institutional workflows. So I'm sure we'll get into it, but I think the tech can be applied to a lot of different kind of use cases. And that was, I got excited about the idea of upgrading the plumbing, if you will.
Yeah. So let's get into it. So, you were chief of staff with the city's city chief compliance officer. What were some of the things that you saw there, disconnected pieces of the banking infrastructure? And ultimately, now in hindsight, how can we use blockchains to kind of connect a lot of this plumbing? Everything becomes more composable, everything's more seamless. The end value to these institutions that Ava Labs and most of the tokenization infrastructure brings.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the use cases that we're focused on from a digital assets and blockchain perspective, a lot of them are as it relates to kind of post-trade settlement, collateral management, really things from like an operational perspective, which ultimately I think can directly kind of correlate to savings in operational overhead and costs and efficiencies as it relates to, again, post-trade things. And I think, my view, especially after coming from Citi, is that being able to be proactive about operations, risk, and control, like it might not be sexy, but it directly correlates with a firm's ability to proactively take risk. And I think a lot of times people in this space say, well, it's not interesting if it's not a new revenue opportunity, if it doesn't generate new revenue. But I think to the extent you can get all of the middle and back office processes right, you're able to, again, take more and better and smarter risk and ultimately increase revenue. And so I think those two things are inextricably linked. And it's something that, when we talk to different enterprises and financial services institutions, we work to kind of facilitate that translation. But that was just, that was kind of my observation after, coming from that background and seeing a lot of the tech enablement capabilities here.
Yeah. And, we've heard from several of these tech enablement partners. We have them on the show frequently. And a lot of times, when they do get an audience with a lot of these financial institutions, these fintechs, whether it be in the payments industry or the financial services, it it's a long sales cycle. You know, a lot of times they come in and almost serve as a consultant role, just educating those teams, helping the financial institutions learn and get an understanding of what is possible out there. And most of the time, you know, the one who comes in and does that education is who they end up partnering with to ultimately launch those tokenized products. And it's, you know, a measure of trust that's built up over that educational process.
Yeah.
What are some of the things, if you have any war stories or experiences that you can share of just coming in and you know, doing the hard work of taking someone 0 to 1 on this journey, because a lot of this is an education gap, you know, some experiences, and then also like what tends to resonate with these institutions and these fintechs that ultimately, like when you see the light bulb moment, you know, what is it that you say that gets them over that line?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like the way that you framed it resonates deeply with the way that we approach things, as well as a lot of the kind of experiences that we've had. I mean, we, as one example, a couple of years ago, we worked with JP Morgan in the context of Project Guardian around the tokenization of alternative assets alongside liquid assets. And like before that announcement was made, we had started cultivating a relationship with our digital asset team probably like 2 years before then, a year and a half to 2 years before then. And a lot of it was just relationship building, education, proactive follow-up, and you know, just constantly kind of working on building the relationship, such that, you know, when they were ready to engage, they knew who we were. And then we really started going on that like trusted advisor journey, where, you know, we came in and we did technical deep dives and showed, you know, the ins and outs of the protocol and the capabilities and the differentiators, and really got, you know, internal stakeholder buy-in from an engineering perspective, from a product perspective, from a business perspective. So I think where we, you know, one of the kind of key differentiators of our BD team is that a lot of us come from financial services. And so we can kind of toe the line in both worlds and really take our partners along the journey in terms of that education and translating the tech into ways that our partners understand and that is relevant for them. And in many cases, to your point, from a consulting perspective, it's helping them sell the business case or sell Avalanche internally to their compliance teams and risk teams and legal, and even like helping them with presentations to regulators. So it's really kind of getting in there, for formulating these trusted advisor relationships where, to your point, when they're ready to do something, it's not like I'm just, you know, peddling a platform. It's like we've really kind of spent the time cultivating that relationship.
And is it backwards compatible in the sense that you're also working with the internal Avalanche team? You know, you're kind of relaying feedback that you hear from the JP Morgans of the world, and hey, we need to adjust this and that on the product to ultimately fit the market's needs?
Totally. I think, especially over the past few years, because, you know, there's a very tight kind of feedback loop from me to our developer relations team, to our AvaCloud team, which is our kind of blockchain as a managed service offering, as well as to our engineering team, in saying these are the themes, or this is something that I'm like constantly hearing. We should think about, you know, obviously they can't make every single change based on every single little piece of feedback, but as things either become repetitive or come from kind of larger financial services institutions, it's really something that those teams have really started to internalize. And part of it is also, it's like, well, if it's going to be relevant for this big bank or for this exchange, it's probably going to be relevant for others. And so it's knowledge and features that it's not just a one-off, it's something that we can leverage, you know, as we scale to other partners as well.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned it earlier. It's this convergence of TradFi, DeFi, really all aspects. This is all becoming one world. But it is upgrading, and it's utilizing tokenization and blockchains to, you know, as these things collide, everything is elevated. The asset quality that we've seen on chain, it was Bitcoin, it was ETH. Those aren't particularly quality assets today, but, you know, like those were the quality assets. Now we're elevating that. We're getting a lot of assets that I think, you know, retail, but also institutional investors are they're comfortable holding these things, for years on end because they provide some sustainable long-term growth. Whereas we really never had that asset universe on chain before. Are you guys primarily working with the issuers of these products themselves, or generally where do you see this market breaking up? And kind of, what are the segments of teams? The asset issuers they're launching some of these products, improving the asset universe on chain, and then you have the tech enablement partners. Is there one area here that you think is particularly poised for growth?
That's a good question. I mean, so maybe just to talk to your comment around upgrading the quality of assets, I think just like as we take a step back and think about tokenization writ large, even before it was called RWAs, like tokenization was a thing back in like 2017, it was STOs. And so tokenization in and of itself is not a new concept. I think that there's many things this time around that make this time different from a tokenization standpoint. I think just to kind of quickly go through those, I think a few years ago, obviously you had a rising rate environment in the real world. And so it basically saw a lot of kind of capital flight from the on-chain world back off chain, and really put a spotlight on the need to bring real yield and real world assets on chain. I think you also had the advent of DeFi, which showcased that, after you tokenize and issue an asset, there's potentially stuff that you can do with that asset. And it's not just, issue and buy and subscribe and that's it. And basically make the asset more productive, and especially with programmability. And there's a lot of things that we can kind of talk about there. You have much more robust infrastructure this time around, whether it's kind of compliance infrastructure, tokenization infrastructure with the requisite licenses to be able to issue and tokenize these assets. Stablecoins are a huge kind of piece of infrastructure that didn't really exist, in as much scale as it does today. And then finally, speaking to the quality of the assets, I think historically the assets that were being tokenized kind of self-selected, to use the technical term, for crappy assets. The insinuation was like, well, if you can't get financing through traditional capital markets, see if like crypto will buy it.
Right.
And there's definitely components of that still today, but it's dramatically improved. And with that, you've seen large, high quality asset managers entering the space, tokenizing their funds and their products. And then, this whole kind of universe of private credit, where even within there's a whole, spectrum of quality, but it's definitely been improving. And so all that's to say is I think tokenization, is definitely here to stay. From our standpoint, we work with both the issuers as well as the tech enablement partners. I mean, from our standpoint, we want to have a relationship with both. And I think from an issuer standpoint, a lot of these asset managers, tokenizing their funds is kind of step one in their broader blockchain and digital asset journey. And it's their way of, I think, like dipping their toe into this space. And all that's to say is I want to make sure that me and my team have a relationship with the asset managers, because there's so much more, I think, for us to do with those teams as we look ahead and on their roadmap. The one last thing that I'll say is we spent many years for crypto, making sure that there was really good kind of high quality asset supply of tokenized assets on Avalanche. And obviously those conversations continue, but where we're spending the majority of our time is on the demand and distribution side of things. Working directly with potential allocators and kind of understanding their mandates and their requirements and what's interesting to them, so we can facilitate the proper introductions to the asset issuers, but also working to cultivate relationships with the fintechs, neobanks, and wealth tech platforms who ultimately would be interested in integrating those assets and those offerings into their back end. And really focused again on that demand and distribution side of the equation, because I think today a lot of the asset managers are focused on potentially selling to crypto natives, which is fine, but I think mass adoption really won't come until you start seeing those integrations with traditional distribution channels.
And so could you walk us through what you think are sort of the roadmap ahead? Tokenizing these funds, is step one, kind of gets their feet wet, they get in the industry, they get a sense of how this whole tokenization thing works. A lot of these tech enablement partners start to build those relationships as well. What do you think ultimately is the next couple of steps and takes us through, after we've tokenized funds, there's some demand from crypto natives, but like you said, a lot of these other fintechs with, traditional customers that may not even realize that crypto is underneath is where I think a lot of people think this is heading. Yeah, take us through what the roadmap is after an asset issuer has tokenized their fund.
Yeah, so there's I would kind of split it up into two different parts. I think on the fintech side of things, what we're seeing in terms of like the order of operations is really for a lot, and it should be segmented out further, but using this as a generality, what we've seen the order of operations be is a lot of those partners start in the first instance to issue or to allow their customers to have access to dollars via stablecoins. That's kind of the first step. Then there is the idea of turning that into digital savings accounts, either through integrations with money market funds in the back end, or through integrations with something like an Aave or a Morpho to start earning on those dollars that are on that platform. Yeah. And then it is a transition to kind of embedded investing, which is where the funds beyond the money market funds kind of slot in there. So and then finally, I would say like stablecoin backed card products, which kind of completes the circle in terms of being able to actually spend those dollars on that platform in real life without having to kind of manually off ramp those stable coins. So that's like the order of operations that we're seeing that a lot of fintechs are interested in. I think as it relates to asset managers, and there's obviously so many different types of asset managers. The ones that we're particularly kind of bullish on is the private credit space. And really, we've been talking about fund tokenization, which is introducing the technology pretty downstream in the process. So where I'm excited about as it relates to the private credit space, and before we get to the fund tokenization, it's also fund tokenization, fund too, is seeing how we can introduce the tech more upstream. Ideally at the point of origination, like when loans are originated to a variety of different entities in the context of like asset-backed finance, specialty finance, and like modern fintech lending. But if we're not there yet, then at least introducing on-chain kind of servicing and verification to start creating these efficiencies that we keep talking about and actually provide concrete reasons for allocators to be interested in leveraging blockchain under the hood. And so in that context, some of those things that we've been talking about with different originators as well as allocators are, to the extent that you manage the facility on chain or you leverage an infrastructure or tech enablement partner that helps to service an asset or a portfolio or facility on chain, there are certain business benefits to you that you get. For example, because you are embedding the terms of the facility into an on-chain NFT, you can therefore start to prevent things like double pledging of collateral, which is a very big issue in the space. You can start to atomically, for the originator, compare an incoming loan request with the terms of the facility pretty quickly, as opposed to spending half a day every week manually reconciling it via an Excel sheet. And then in an ideal world where you start to use stablecoins, being able to draw down that from that facility on a daily basis, as opposed to a weekly or a biweekly basis, which occurs today. So those are just some examples, but it's kind of getting into the plumbing, but these are the things that start to provide a concrete reason to put some of this stuff on chain.
And this is very helpful context. For so long, we've had, tons of conversations about the blockchain plumbing, but, not so many about, the other side of the world, which is ultimately now integrating with the blockchain plumbing. These things are now coming together. I think you make a lot of great points. And, at the end of the day, I think, people are very excited because especially in that fintech world, what that looks like to the end consumer is a high yield savings account. It looks like getting, 4, 5, 6, 7% on their money rather than, a couple of basis points in a savings account. Now they can, have the stablecoin backed cards. They can spend it just like they're accustomed to, but they earn some extra yield. And when it comes to the asset issuer space, it sounds like there's a lot of back office optimizations that can take place and a lot of, like you said, risk management, global risk management systems that can be further optimized as a result of, not double pledging collateral and kind of getting an understanding of the entire topography of where money is sitting at any given point.
Yep. Yep. I would agree with that.
Morgan, take us home. Any closing thoughts on your side? Just, generally as more and more people, because we have conversations, plenty of companies in the space. This bifurcation is happening. On one hand, people are going into the AI agent world. On the other hand, they're going into the financial institution world. Either way, they're leaving like the old crypto
Casino.
yeah, the crypto casino with no product market fit beyond that. Like they're leaving that behind. They're kind of going into these two new worlds. So any closing thoughts that people should keep in mind would be great.
Yeah, well, I do think at some point the worlds of AI and blockchain will definitely converge in various types of use cases. But I'm still not over stable coins. Like I think that whole space will continue to grow, and by extension of that, I think a lot of these real world use cases will be built on and around that. And so I would say to definitely continue to watch that space in terms of how it impacts kind of follow on use cases.
Yeah, we're calling this world around stablecoins neo finance. So keep that in mind as well. Morgan, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
We'll see you again soon. Thanks, Morgan. All right, guys. We're gonna continue to bring you guys neo finance coverage because this is where we believe a ton of activity is happening. It is much more sustainable than we believe, and like you're hearing everyone agree, the crypto casino is unsustainable. So we're going to continue to bring the best and brightest of tokenization, RWAs, stable coins front and center to you guys to learn about how institutions and asset managers are thinking about it. And one of the things is that they're continuing to operate in a multi-chain world. We are seeing more and more blockchains pop up. Whether those are permissioned blockchains, we're seeing financial institutions tokenize their funds, maybe not go on one blockchain to rule them all. The multi-chain is alive and well as ever, even if the asset prices don't reflect it on a day like today. But that's why we're bringing Michael and Jason, the founders of Relay, up on the show because these guys just raised. They've got plenty of runway. They're going to be around for a long, long time. So let's bring them up, and we'll get a sense of how raising is in the current environment. Michael, Jason, welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, what's up? Us. Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to host you guys. I think this timing is raising in this environment is pretty impeccable. Like you guys have set the scene.
It's so weird
to worry about. Yeah, like what is going through your mind as you're reacting to, coming off this raise, which was probably a long process, but, finally announced today, and then the market conditions that you're seeing out there?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah. Honestly, we feel really lucky. I think, crypto markets are always a little bit crazy. And so we've kind of had a position from the beginning that when things are great and you have an opportunity to raise more money, like take advantage of those times. Like, to be perfectly honest, this round was on the easier side, right? Like we had our two big investors from our Series A double down. And so that's kind of like the best place to be in, right? Like we got to do this quickly with people that we love working with. And then we got to like kind of just go back to building. So yeah, feeling very grateful.
Yeah, we also just don't look at our personal holdings and look at, the company mission, what we're trying to do. I feel like that makes it a lot easier. Like there's a lot of doom and gloom, obviously, with around the Twitter sphere, but I feel like for us, like we're feeling like we're doing really well. Like customers are pouring in. We feel like we're nailing our messaging and really getting to people. So yeah, it's like kind of a two different worlds where you're like, just focus on what we're doing and don't focus on like maybe the little bit of churn or stuff that's happening that maybe won't matter ultimately.
Yeah. Well, Interop has changed significantly. You guys may not even consider yourselves Interop in the traditional sense. We've had debates on here, between mint and burn and intense, all these different, multi-chain transfer strategies, the different architectures of Interop protocols. Now it feels like a lot of this has pretty much been set. You guys have, infrastructure that people love, came out of nowhere and rose to the top very quickly. It always feels like overnight success, right? That's,
Yeah.
what you guys have been building a long time. But I'm curious from your perspective how you've seen this landscape change, and we're seeing a ton of things in terms of AI, institutionalization of crypto. But I'm curious from your perspective, operating this financial infrastructure company, how have you seen the landscape change? Maybe since your seed all the way through to your Series B.
Yeah, you want to take this, Michael?
Yeah, I feel like for us, like things haven't really changed that much. Like when we started, we were focusing on, okay, there's a bunch of NFTs on a bunch of different chains. People's balances are scattered all over the place. Like we just wanted to solve a very simple problem of, can we help people to cross-chain mint? And for us, that meant, okay, we need to focus on making this as cheap as possible, as fast as possible, because in that landscape, like an NFT could mint out all of a sudden. You didn't want the cost of bridging to be higher than the cost of minting like a 1 cent NFT. So we like started there. And so we had really, really intense constraints on like how we wanted to behave as a company, the type of service, type of protocol we wanted to build. And so for us, like that was the seed. And then it bloomed into like, let's do the same thing for tokens, like cross-chain token buying. And then like for us, it just started to generalize from there. So like the core experience of what we're trying to provide was the same, but it just kept growing in terms of its application. So for us, like it's not that different. It's just, this is what we were trying to do, but more people get it now. It's in more places now. And, like obviously like there's a ton of different players in the space, but like for us, focusing on crypto UX and like making that experience as good as possible was just, that was the thing that we were doing. And we're still doing that. And we have a long way to go to finish the job.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that, these consumer expectations that Michael is talking about are the expectations of, the majority of people when they come on chain, right? So you have, crypto native people, they're okay using bridges, moving money around, having some friction. But like if you really want to bring mass adoption, you actually have to meet these standards, right? Being on chain has to feel like what it's like to use a credit card at the grocery store or buy something online. And so that really is like our long-term vision, right? It's like, how can you make this so simple that it's actually usable? It's like crypto, and for blockchains to cross the chasm, you have to like know what the people on the other side of the chasm need, right? And those are like the majority of users in the world that have expectations about what the UX is like. So that's kind of always been our focus. Now we went and applied that to bridging and cross-chain swaps because the markets were there, and we really felt like was an opportunity to like, cut our teeth inside of the crypto ecosystem. But we have bigger ambitions than that, I would say.
Okay. Well, I want to get into those bigger ambitions. Jason, before we do, I just want to read off some stats here. Relay has powered over $20 billion in volume across 100 million transactions, supporting 85 chains, including Solana, Bitcoin, Tron, every major EVM network. So, there's a lot going on here. How have you guys been able to make this so extensible? Like for a long time, we had, Mint and Burn was able to do this, Intense were able to do that, but you still had the lift of integrating chain after chain after chain, 85 plus chains. How have you guys been able to integrate this far and wide?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It was really just a focus of ours from the beginning, right? So, shout out to the Zora team. They were the team that first asked us to help build something that could go cross-chain. And one of the big problems there was that there just weren't a lot of teams that were willing to go and work on this new network, right? So from the very early days, we were thinking about like, there's going to be a lot of chains, right? The original story of Relay was Reservoir, this NFT company, and we were kind of working with teams that were on the forefront of trying to push consumer crypto, and that meant cheap block space, right? Like nobody wanted to mint $10 NFTs anymore. And so all of a sudden you had all of these like crazy chains, a lot of which are not around anymore, and so we needed to go and be there for them from the beginning, right? So that was just a focus for us from the beginning. And we really felt like it was an opportunity to connect the frontier of crypto by just being really aggressive and going to these places really quickly.
And I want to get your reaction to like Vitalik's recent writings here, because
Oh yeah.
I think some people are questioning, the L2 roadmap as a whole, maybe the multi-chain. And so as, cross-chain payments infrastructure, money infrastructure, for these sorts of things, how are you guys reacting to that?
Yeah, I mean, when I read that, I feel a lot of alignment with it. Just from the perspective of what I think he's really saying is we have to have valuable chains, we have to have valuable protocols. Like, I believe that too. Like, Relay cannot sustain on a bunch of chains, like rising and falling and like just like riding the wave of like chain expansion forever. Like, there actually needs to be a bunch of really valuable chains out there that are differentiated from each other. Like, I think we are doing something so audacious in trying to replace in a global economy on blockchain rails. And to do that, I feel like it's a necessity to have so many tries, so many perspectives, so many different types of architectures and trade-offs. Like, there's just so many different types of needs out there. And like right now we're like serving the crypto native ecosystem a lot, but like there's a lot of different types of people out there that are going to have a lot of different needs. And I feel like we don't have one bank, we don't have, one type of anything out there. And even just like cultural differences and cultural preferences make me feel like there's going to be a lot of chains that are going to be really valuable. And like, we don't need a million chains. We need, even just like 100 or 50. Relay is this extremely valuable company under those conditions.
Yeah.
And so I'm motivated by that because I think it's a call to action to do what we're doing, which is make a valuable piece of infrastructure and, solve some real problems for people. And I think there's like more nuance to that in his story. And, maybe he wouldn't say it the same way that I do, but like, that's my takeaway. And I'm actually pretty motivated by seeing that.
Very cool. Yeah, from my perspective, is saying, yeah, we don't want any more copy pasta chains. Build something real, build something valuable, or pivot. Right, like
Right.
that's where it's at. And so where you guys are now, you've got 20 billion in volume. You've got tons of product market fit here. People want to move across chains. I'm seeing, and we're talking to a lot of people that I think see it too. This bifurcation. There's a lot of infrastructure and crypto casino products that never really had product market fit. Not you guys, but a lot of guys that are out there, and they're kind of falling by the wayside. Now we see this bifurcation. In one end, going to the AI agent world, embracing payments, stable coins has kind of spurred that, and kind of pivoting more towards the deep tech. On the other side, pivoting more towards the financial world, stable coins are driving a lot of that as well. People want to talk to the asset issuers. They see BlackRock, they see tokenization as sort of a market that is very sustainable and positioned for a lot of growth. How do you think these two worlds ultimately collide on chain? And how do you think Relay can bring like agentic finance to reality? How does it help bring a lot of this, neo finance world to reality? And ultimately, where do you see the vision if you're forecasting out Relay, a handful of years from now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I think in some ways you can frame this bifurcation as like, the skeuomorphic and the non-skeuomorphic versions of crypto, right? Like there's like a world where blockchains eat traditional finance, right? And the people that are doing the behaviors that are already in the financial world, they just live on blockchain rails and they may not even know that, right? And then you have like this vision of crypto as something that creates experiences that never existed before, right? And the on-chain world. And like we believe in both of these things, right? And I think the reality is that under both of those conditions, you need to move money across chains instantly, right? And so I think our vision is like really being like critical infrastructure for how people move money between chains as quickly, as cheaply, as reliably as possible. And we don't necessarily see us as being like, we need to go in one camp or the other, in the same ways that blockchains don't, right? Like blockchains themselves are core infrastructure that you can build all sorts of different stuff on top of, right? So we kind of, it's not that we're like use case agnostic. We think a lot about what types of things people are building on top of Relay and how we can support them. We just think that, both of these use cases are valuable and there's lots of things to explore there. I think the reality is, in the cases where you have like a real retail consumer doing something that they're trying to make a payment at a store or something like that, they really don't care about the blockchain. Right. And so I think like that fits really well into our mission of kind of abstracting away the chains, helping people just do things that really matter to them. And so I think that's there's a lot of positive pieces there. And it's something we're paying really close attention to. That like cycle is a lot longer, I think, right? So like we're still very much interested in like making crypto work for people, making it possible for people to try new experiments and build new things like inside of the crypto native ecosystem. But definitely paying attention to like the kind of influence of TradFi and how things are changing there.
Yeah. And to your point about consumers, cheaper, better, faster. And if they can get that and blockchain helps with that, blockchain's great, but it's whatever that's going to get there that the consumer wants. Michael, please.
No, I think to this point, I'm also like really excited about agentic finance. Like I think more transactions, more like just autonomous activity happening. I think that does make me feel like more chains are necessary, more fragmentation, more experimentation. But I just think, you see all these people building so quickly now. I can only imagine there's going to be more applications, more financial applications, more experiments, more, autonomous financial actors. Like this is all good for Relay. Like experimentation is good for Relay. Fragmentation is good for Relay because, it's our job to make it coherent and create this UX layer that all these participants can interact with that make interacting with the blockchain feel like digital finance does now. So I think both of these angles are super exciting for us. And I think to Jason's point, like we are just trying to be the best, interop layer that we can be so that those two paths can fulfill themselves. And I think we have such an important role and it's going to be extremely hard to fulfill. And, we're working hard and trying to figure out how to do that the best way that we can. But I think it's just like forming that foundation. And I think we're the best team to do that.
I love the positioning that I hear you guys orbiting around for Relay. It's like essentially making order out of money chaos. And which I think is generally a really good place to be because you're betting on chaos continuing to happen, which is pretty much given thing in this, the one thing you can guarantee is going to change is there's going to be change, right? Like this is going to continue to happen. The entropy of the world continues to evolve. There's going to be more chaos. And if you guys are there as service providers that can help people make sense of what's happening in this chaos, and accelerated by AI and agentic payments and, this new wave of asset issuers and assets, I think makes a ton of sense. And people are really going to need products like Relay in order to make sense of everything that's happening on chain. I just want to get a sense of
one thing I might add to that. Sure. I think it's definitely true that we're making sense of the chaos. I also think that like there's a really good case to be made that Relay enables like not that chaos to exist, but for like the types of products that people really want to work, right? So a good example would be like imagine you're building a neo finance app, like a neo bank on stablecoin rails, and you want to use your own stablecoin. Well, it's actually pretty hard to do that if your stablecoin isn't connected to the rest of the blockchain ecosystem, right? So we think of Relay as also like giving people the tools to use the most innovative primitives that are available and making it possible to stitch that together with the rest of the ecosystem, right? Like you want to be able to build an app and issue a stable coin and have your users pay with it.
Yeah.
Not just like hold it inside of some app, but actually
be
use
isolated.
it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think like that's one of the things that we think about a lot is like, how can Relay also help drive that innovation, drive people to try new things and hopefully do new things that actually work because, you know, they get the benefits of being sort of globally connected to all the other blockchains and they're not isolated. It's easy to onboard, makes the product better.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
To that point, Jay, I feel like we also help you start anywhere. Like if you start on Solana, like you're not going to get isolated there because you get access to all the liquidity from every other chain. And I think, you know, as long as you're building valuable things, like it shouldn't be that important where you start. And I think that's part of the experimentation, part of the work that I feel like we're serving here is giving people the opportunity to start wherever, you know, deploy that stable coin, deploy on that chain, deploy on 3 chains. Like we can, you know, help people to smooth over some of those like chain risks, some of the liquidity risks that might come from choosing one specific spot or another.
Yeah. And it's a much more pragmatic approach than the tribalistic approach of people said, oh, L2s are competing with one another. Oh, I want to be on this chain. I think all of that is going away because, and this is what tends to happen in these market conditions. People see, oh, we've really got to make some changes around here. And like, you know, we've got to bunker down and find what end consumers really want. And I think that's been a driving force for you guys since the beginning.
Totally.
Last question I got for you guys here is, you know, what are you going to spend the money on? Where does the 17 million go?
I think a big part of it goes to scaling the team.
Okay.
You know, we're still pretty lean. We're about 30 people right now. We have a lot to do. And, you know, we want to hire the best people to bring them on and kind of join the mission, right? So, you know, we're looking for good people that want to work on this problem, that are passionate about blockchains, passionate about how, you know, we can deliver amazing consumer UX, you know, through this technology. And I think that's a big focus for us, you know, like making sure that we build a great team. So that's, I think like really that's the earmark, right? And, you know, the flip side of that is we've been in crypto for a long time. We know what it's like to raise money and then have your back against the wall. And like, we never want to do that, right? Like we're here to stay. So we raised enough money, all the money we need to feel really confident that we, you know, can take a really big swing. And yeah, so I think that's basically the story.
Yeah. Well said. I think, unfortunately, I think there's going to be some layoffs out there in the world, and you guys are hiring. You can probably get some people at a steal, to be honest with you.
True.
Yeah, hopefully everybody keeps their job.
Yeah, that's guys. Thank you so much for joining. It was a pleasure. Really.
Yeah, it was great chatting.
It was
super
fun. Despite, you know, all the things that are happening out there, it was a great time, and would love to have you guys on again soon. Like you said, you're not going anywhere, so. You know, keep on building and keep fighting the good fight. It's a pleasure, guys.
Cheers.
Awesome.
Appreciate the time. Yeah, we'll chat soon.
See you again soon. Cheers, guys.
Yep. Bye.
There we go. Well, guys, that's Relay. Unfortunately, I do believe there's going to be some people laid off. That's just the reality of how these things go. I think, you know, we are getting more reasonable and safer with our corporate treasury management in this industry, but it's not perfect. But Relay's hiring. That's the good news. And they just raised their Series B, $17 million, led by Archetype and Union Square. Guys, that's our show. You can see that there are points of like places where this is still happening. There is still a very, very much a secular bull market. That's how these companies are able to raise $17 million. It's why the institutions at the highest level are really taking a look at this industry. They want the blockchain. They want the stable coins. Do they want the 1001 L2 token with no product market fit? Maybe not. But they're going to bring their own assets. They're going to put it on blockchain rails. Maybe that's a permission blockchain. doesn't matter. There's going to be lots of opportunities out there. Learn about AI, learn about finance, learn about where this industry is heading, because neo finance is at the center of it all. And it's really where AI and financial institutions are converging. All of it is built around stable coins. There's still tons of innovation happening. So we're going to bring you guys all the info. Here's where you can stay updated, get a sense of everything that's happening in the space. We're going to be back tomorrow for our final show of the week, and it'll be a good one. So we'll see you there tomorrow. Peace, guys. Stay safe.